Welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio, where we bring you conversations with the top business minds on Long Island and around the nation every week. Featuring expert consultants and small business owners who have found success but are also willing to share their top tips, failures, and give gritty, matter-of-fact advice based on their firsthand experience. Now, let's get down to business on Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello and welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation. My name is Schwetz, AVP of Business Banking at Jovia Financial Credit Union, along with Denisha Boston Hill, CEO, Keeper of the Brand, Marketing and Digital Agency. And we're focused on being the premier resource for business and entrepreneurship. We bring you weekly business advice, tips, tools, and services that help you grow your business. Plus, we interview the top business leaders in the industry. Now, I have a very special guest today. He's someone that a lot of business folks on Long Island knows. Helping provide us with business empowerment today is master networker, master connector, Alan Schwartz. Alan is the Alan J. Schwartz, Esquire of Law Offices of Alan J. Schwartz, PC. Alan, welcome to the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back again, Ray.
I know. It's great to have you. We had you on, Alan, I think very early on as Tower Talk had just started. And you know what? I'm pleased to say that I knew you before we started the show, and I continue to know you today. And I'm very thankful for your friendship and glad to have you on, because I know there's a lot of people who could really benefit from having a conversation with you if they already haven't had one in person. So this will be a good substitute if they haven't had one. And I would advise you that if you do business and you work on Long Island, you owe, and you're networking, you owe it to yourself to speak to Alan. With that intro, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm very fortunate because at the age of 69, I don't plan on ever retiring. So I'll start at where I am and then go back to where this began. Mm-hmm. I wanted to have my own practice as far back as I can remember. My parents tell me when they were still around that at the age of 2, all I wanted to do was be a lawyer. And I think a lot of it came from watching Perry Mason shows. The excitement of being in the courtroom. Of course, it's rare that we see the defendant confess in the last 10 minutes of the show, but things like that happen. But I love the excitement of being in the courtroom. And from that early age on, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, which was to have my own practice, have other attorneys working with me. We're currently 12, each of whom have different areas of concentration, and I get to pick and choose what I want to do. I started in the Nassau DA's office in 1980, so I was a prosecutor for 5 years. I've been a defense attorney for 35 years, and for the last 3, I've also been a village judge in Center Island, where I have the privilege of overseeing the lifestyle of the rich and famous like Billy Joel and Sean Hannity, along with all their gardeners and workmen and all the problems they have driving on that type of an island.
So, Alan, you, as I mentioned before, you are a supreme connector. Everyone seems to know you. And would you say that that's your differentiator, or what other differentiators do you have? Because I think there are many.
I think that's one of them, but I really enjoy people, and that's what keeps me coming back for more. And the other reason I won't retire is because I enjoy what I'm doing so much. And it's changed drastically as a result of COVID and so many things being virtual. My role in running the practice is different also. But the real differentiator for this firm is that we offer, or we like to think that we offer, concierge legal services. We keep our clients informed of everything. I never want a client to have to call us and say, what's going on with my case? Did you send the letter? Did you make the phone call? So we keep them in the loop with a lot of hand-holding. We tell clients where to be, how to dress, how to talk, how to behave, and what to do in the courtroom, because that's critical. And it's interesting because what makes me different is I'm able to look at the cases that I handle, not from one perspective or two, but from 3, having been a prosecutor and then a defense attorney and now a judge. And it gives us a very unique perspective when we're dealing with a variety of different types of cases. That's one of the things that we do. And the other thing is we have attorneys in the office ranging from the very experienced right down to our summer associates who come in with a lot of enthusiasm, one of whom actually we followed through the rest of his law school career after being a summer associate going in between his first and second years of law school. And he's now been with us for 4 years. So not only do I enjoy working with younger people who are enthusiastic about what I do for a living, but sometimes the payback is they end up joining us years down the line.
Now, you've had a lot of experience, obviously. What are some of the more exciting cases that you've been involved with, that your firm's been involved with?
Well, I'm going to start with the one we just finished because it's a little after 3:00. And my son and heir and daughter-in-law are in the office now because at 2:00, we closed on their purchase of their first home, which they decided to do. They lived in Astoria, and now they're moving out to Long Island because when my son Robbie decided that he was going to join me in the practice, and that came to the attention of the Brooklyn DA, his boss, he brought him into the office and promoted him to homicide. So now that he's a homicide prosecutor, he's explained to me that will only make him more valuable to us, but I'll have to wait another year or two till he's ready to consider joining us if he doesn't do something else along the line. But it's good because it keeps me coming back for more and gives us something to look forward to. But we closed on his house in well under an hour, and he is now a happy homeowner, which is very exciting because to be able to do that for your own family, I will say that he's one of the worst clients I've ever had because he was very difficult to deal with. And since he wasn't paying, I won't say that he got what he paid for because he got a lot more. But it really was a pleasure, and it really pleased everybody in the office, and they all loved seeing him as well.
Yeah, that really has to bring things full circle for you, for sure.
Yeah. I'll give you another example, though, on a more serious one. On a criminal note, we represented somebody not long ago who was charged with a DWI, who owned a rather large company here on Long Island that was celebrating a holiday with his staff, and he took them out to a local restaurant and went through the trouble of arranging transportation for everybody through a limousine company so that nobody would be driving because he knew they were going to be having wine and cocktails and a variety of other things. He had his own car, which he drove home in, and got pulled over by a Nassau County police officer who was on routine motor patrol, but was specifically assigned to DWI enforcement. There were some issues about the manner in which he was pulled over and what was said and what took place. But I've been handling DWI cases for over 40 years, as I said, in a number of different ways. And I have a pretty good idea, assuming the clients are telling us the truth, whether or not they were really affected by the consumption of alcohol. The problem here was, had he taken a breathalyzer, I'm confident he would not have been arrested. But because of the attitude of the particular police officer, he was not comfortable submitting to any of the requests and politely declined, the result of which is he got charged with refusing to take a breathalyzer and operating while intoxicated without having a reading that could have been dispositive as to whether or not he was intoxicated. This particular arrest was so bad that we went through full-blown hearings on it and convinced a Nassau County judge who handles nothing but DWIs to throw out every piece of evidence in the case, leaving the Nassau DA's office with no case left, but they were still unwilling to dismiss it in the interest of justice, as a result of which we ended up making a motion to dismiss. This is the first time I've seen this in 40 years, that not only did the case get dismissed and the record sealed, but we arranged for the return of his $200,000 limited edition Mercedes, which was being held for possible forfeiture. So that was very exciting, to say the least, because the more we said to the DA, you really have no case here, the more they insisted that we return to court on a regular basis, both before and during COVID. And as they say, the rest was a happy ending.
You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ray Schwetz, and our guest today is Alan J. Schwartz, Esquire, of Law Offices of Alan J. Schwartz, PC. So, Alan, I know we've talked about some exciting stuff going on in the practice. It's not all like it is in the movies, though, of course. What are some of the common misconceptions about what you do?
I think if I could use television legal shows or legal dramas and comedies as an example, when I watch television, which is not often, I favor things more like Night Court and Boston Legal, because the truth is that's a better depiction of what happens in particularly the criminal courts than the much more serious ones, which are oftentimes way off the mark. That's the type of thing that keeps me coming back for more. When my son became a prosecutor 8 years ago, I said to him, you're really going to have to collect your memoirs, because things are going to happen in the courtroom that nobody will believe. It's one of the reasons that as a criminal practitioner, people love having us at cocktail parties, because we usually end up with the best stories, and the stories are more fact than fiction. Of course, we have to protect the identities of the clients, because one of the other things that differentiates us from many of my colleagues is most of my clients do not want to appear in the media, whether it be Channel 12, Newsday, or some of the bigger publications. So we go way out of our way to keep our cases out of the media, much to the chagrin of some of the people who do social media for us, because they want to publish those things. It makes it difficult to get clients willing to give us accolades on social media, because everybody's concerned if they say I was their lawyer, people are going to assume it was a criminal case. So oftentimes, since we do a lot of other things, I have to put a disclaimer in there and say, yes, I was his lawyer, but it was a real estate transaction, or we did his recent will. So that's another area where we're a little bit different from some of my colleagues.
What are some of the challenges that you faced? I know your industry, really didn't stop necessarily with the pandemic and such, but I'm assuming also, pandemic aside, there's been other challenges throughout your career. So tell us a little bit about that.
It's always a problem in a small firm because of the number of people working here if we lose somebody. Because in a bigger firm with a lot of lawyers and a lot of support staff, if you lose somebody, somebody else fills in. We spend a lot of time training people, and to lose somebody to move on to do something else can be a mixed blessing. I mean, if somebody decides they want to start their own practice, we're happy for them, but we're sorry to lose them. So just from the sheer size, I mean, if we lose a paralegal, having to train somebody all over again can put us way behind the curve. The bigger problems, I know you said, other than COVID and the pandemic, the COVID and the pandemic has been a nightmare for so many people. We were deemed essential in several of the areas in which we practice, and we've been back in the office on a daily basis since last April or May. The biggest challenge we're having now is all the cases that we're backing up are all coming to fruition at the same time. And it's created a nightmare because we practice throughout the state and sometimes throughout the country, although primarily in the metropolitan area. And we had a directive come from one administrative judge who said late on a Friday afternoon, the courts were reopening on Monday morning and everybody was expected to be present in person. That created a real problem for some of our clients who were out of the country on vacation that were told they could appear virtually by using their iPad, their phone, or by some other means. So we're spending a tremendous deal of time now calendaring and recalendaring on a daily basis because we have redundant calendar systems, so we never miss an appearance, an appointment, or a deadline. And today, every time we think something's going to be live, it can turn into a virtual court appearance or vice versa. I've had lawyers going back to court only to be told by a judge, I have no staff, so I can't call a case in person. Go back to your office and we'll do it on Zoom or we'll do it on some other form of virtual media. So every day is literally another adventure, coupled with our governor having come up with the Bail Reform Act in the past 2 years and the wide sweeping changes in criminal law in the state of New York with open file discovery and all the discovery laws that have changed, which have been referred to as the most sweeping reforms of all the laws as affect criminal practitioners in the past 50 years. Now, the good thing about that is that's caused many of my colleagues who decided they would never retire, that at this point, they don't want to relearn what they knew after 40 years. So it's narrowed the scope of people who have as much experience as I do with people who said this is just not fun anymore because we're still not seeing the camaraderie we've come to know and love by being in the courtroom. They're still operating with skeletal crews. Everything is a little bit different. Every day we spend half our time trying to figure out what the COVID protocols are, even in terms of masks versus not wearing masks. So I think if you can keep a positive attitude and look at this, that it's anything but dull, then it's not that daunting a task.
Yeah, I do feel like we're always learning, and I do feel it's, yeah, you're right. The landscape seems to change on a daily basis. So I can imagine what it's like, given all that you're experienced over the past year. Now, that all said, and you are a social person, so obviously being around other people and doing what you do is huge. You seem to compensate, though, because you have plenty of networking opportunities that you're partaking of. And I know every time I open up Facebook, I'll see you're at 2 or 3 events sometimes a day. How do you keep up with all that?
Very little sleep. You know what I enjoyed, Ray, truthfully? Yeah. I'm embracing rainmaking with the same passion that I embraced trial work when I was a young DA. Not everybody likes it. I judge national mock trial competitions, and I've taught on the law school level. And it's funny because everybody thinks that being a trial lawyer is going to be romantic until you actually do it, and it's not for everybody. I was judging a national mock trial competition at NYU Law School some years ago when one of the students said to me, "Mr. Schwartz, how do I know if this is really for me?" Because she said, "I'm so nervous, I can't eat, I can't sleep when I have a competition coming up, let alone a real trial." And I pretty much said to her, if when we take a recess, you go into the ladies' room and you find yourself throwing up into the garbage pail, then maybe it's not for you. If you're just a little nervous in the beginning until the trial starts, and then you hunker down and you realize you love this and this is what you want to do, then perhaps it is, but it's not for everybody, because it's like being a performer to many extents, where you're dealing with stage fright and you're dealing with adrenaline, or an elite athlete. If when the actual trial begins or the competition begins, you hunker down and you get that feeling that this is what I should be doing, then again, it's a wonderful thing. But that was years ago. At this point, we have never advertised, and I don't intend on starting now. It's interesting because I've been doing this long enough that advertising for attorneys was strictly prohibited. It just wasn't permitted. And I didn't find it effective with things like Yellow Book, because we found that people were calling colleagues of mine and saying, "What do you charge for DWI? What do you charge for house closing?" And my answer would always be, if all you're concerned about is price and the lowest price on the page, call somebody else. Now, in truth, everything we do is probably a form of advertising on social media or in many of the networking groups where you're explaining to people what you do for a living, but it's not quite that blatant. It's not quite the same. We haven't needed it because our practice has flourished strictly on a referral basis, and hence my involvement with networking, because I understand that nobody likes lawyers and nobody wants them around until they need them. But when they need us quickly, particularly when it comes to criminal defense.
Now, they say that, but they don't know you. So getting to know you in person and speaking with you at events and working with you, I would say might change your mind. So you've also done a lot of work with that's related to networking, but on some of the advisory boards for organizations. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your work there?
Well, I'll tell you one of the more exciting ones right now, which is the Long Island Fight for Charity. I know you know that one well, and I'm pleased to report with a little plug that we are hoping to return live this year on November 22nd. That event is traditionally the Monday before Thanksgiving, where we have over 1,200 people in attendance. The money is raised courtesy of the Long Island Community Chest that I'm now a board member of, where the money all goes to local charities. And what we do is we recruit business people to fight for charity, as opposed to getting fighters. So companies will sponsor employees, friends, whatever it might be, for short bouts. It also turns into a Taste of Long Island, where we recruit many of our local restaurateurs. That, of course, is a challenge this year, because you know how many of them we've lost and how stretched out they are. But I will tell you, everybody that came in last year that I've spoken to is coming back with open arms, because notwithstanding all the problems they face in getting help and keeping their restaurants afloat, we even have one in particular who did not survive COVID, but is still an executive chef, and he's doing individual catering on his own, but he's coming back, and he just does not want to not be a part of this again, even though he doesn't have the backing of the restaurant any longer. So it's a wonderful thing watching people together. And as you know, the two of us having been at an event together just last night, people are hungry to get out there and get together again. And if it can be for a good cause, that's a wonderful thing.
Agreed. Yeah, that's the best reason to get together. You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio. Our guest today is Alan J. Schwartz, Esquire of the law offices of Alan J. Schwartz, PC. My name is Ray Schwetz, and you're on the voice of Nash Community College, 90.3 WHPC. So, Alan, what type of advice, you've mentored, a lot of junior attorneys and other people within your firm. What is some of the advice you'd give another person looking to get into your line of work?
Very simple. It all comes down to one word: passion. Be passionate about it or don't do it. One of the reasons I love having interns working with us, and we've had interns ranging from paralegal interns, college student interns, law student interns, is it gives them an opportunity to see what we really do firsthand, which is very different from the old days. When I was in college, I worked as a law clerk. You got paid to do it, but I wasn't second seating an experienced attorney. Our interns, particularly the law student interns, sit with us. They second seat us on trial. They come into chambers. They get to sit down with the judges. We teach them how we network, and it gives them a firsthand opportunity to decide if this is really what they want to do. And it's interesting because I learned that with my own son. He was pre-med when he went off to Brandeis and ended up turning everything around because of his opportunity to intern in the courts and for trial attorneys, and decided that was much more interesting to him than medicine. Fortunately for him, Brandeis had an equally high acceptance rate for law school as medical school, but it's worked out well for him, primarily because I, many years ago when he was young, would say to friends and colleagues, can my son intern for you? No pay, he'll be your gopher person, he'll drive you, he'll get your coffee, he'll do whatever you want, but let him just shadow you and see what it is you do, because we all have preconceived notions about what it's like to be a banker or a lawyer or a doctor or a dentist. And when you sit there and you go through it, I think people find they either love it or they hate it. I had a friend who was another experienced criminal practitioner who asked me if his son could intern for me because he hated criminal law, and he thought maybe it was because he hated criminal law with his father. But when I spent more time with him, it became apparent he did not like being in the courts. He really preferred residential real estate. So we had him work in that area in the practice, and that's what he ultimately ended up doing. On the other hand, I had a friend who called me because he wanted his son to become an attorney and go to law school. And he said, would I speak to him? And of course I did. And he came in, and after spending an hour with this young man, I called him back and said, the only reason he's considering going to law school is to make you happy. That's going to be a nightmare. It's 3 very intense years. He has an entrepreneurial spirit. He has no interest in practicing law, and you're going to be wasting your money and his time if you really want to be happy about what he's doing. And for me, everything in life is about passion, whether it's motorcycling or sailing or playing golf or being in court or lecturing or being on trial. If you're passionate about what you're doing, then it's never work, and it keeps you coming back for more. And if you're not, find something else that will make you passionate. That's my opinion.
I would agree with that. And, you find the passion in whatever aspect of your work, because that is the most important thing. And obviously you're very passionate about what you do. What do you think has been most impactful in your work? Is there anything where you look back and you go, you know what, we did a great job here, and I'm so glad we did this?
That happens on most cases that we deal with on a regular basis. I mean, we had one just yesterday where we represented a very high-ranking security analyst for the state of Israel who got caught up in something locally that just yesterday we got dismissed. And it's interesting because he was so appreciative that he is putting together a law enforcement trip to Israel that's being subsidized through the JCRC of Long Island, that to show his appreciation, since I am involved with law enforcement on a number of different levels, he's invited me to join them. So that will be interesting, to say the least, because it's funny. I'm a defense attorney and I'm a judge currently. And as a former prosecutor, I'm also a board member of APPLE, which is the American Academy for Professional Law Enforcement, all of which involves people who are currently involved in law enforcement, from police commissioners to district attorneys to assistant district attorneys. And I'm also the executive vice president of the Nassau County Police Reserve, which at first might sound like a conflict as a defense attorney, but to the contrary, it means we have a lot of credibility when we're reaching out to deal with law enforcement, knowing how to cross-examine cops, knowing the good from the bad. I mean, at a time like this with Blue Lives Matter, people are very polarized about how they feel about police. And there are good and there are bad. Just as I said, with the DWI example I gave you earlier, this was a bad cop. We've had more than one case with him, but he's the exception. That was the exception to the rule. My experience with law enforcement have been, these are people who are selfless, that put the public good against, their own welfare, oftentimes much to the chagrin of their families and relatives. So we don't all have to be enemies. We're all working in the same system and hopefully aiming to do the same thing, which is to get a proper result.
Agreed. So looking forward, as you said, the landscape is still kind of changing on a daily basis. What are some of the things on the horizon? You mentioned the Long Island Fight for Charity. What are some of the other things that are on the horizon for you and your team?
It's interesting because with the younger people in the office, I have learned that you really have to relate to people on whatever level they wish to relate. And working with young people keeps me younger. And what I mean by that is I'm old school. To me, if I have a choice and I was going to sit down with you, we're doing this virtually. The first time that you referred to earlier, we sat side by side in a radio studio, which was phenomenal. So to me, face-to-face, in-person was always the best way to go. The fallback position was telephone. Well, all of a sudden, when people started emailing, that was the next level. And then with the text messaging and the Facebook messaging, and with my younger clients, they'll text us from my waiting room, but they'll text, I'm in the courtroom, I'm waiting, am I in the right place? And the texts were nonstop. And in the beginning, my feeling was, it's not dignified, it's not secured, you shouldn't be texting your lawyer. But what I learned quickly was if I don't work on the level that people want to work, then I no longer have them as clients. So I do text with my younger clients, I email with other clients, telephone calls are great. I mean, one of the things that's so good about the virtual world that we've moved into, I've pretty much moved away from old-fashioned conference calling because with Zoom, we can see each other the way you and I are doing right now. We can see body language. Now that has pros and cons. I mean, I've lectured on things that you should not do in a Zoom call, and I keep a scrapbook of things that you see on the screen that you just can't believe. But it really is an effective way. It's almost like out of the Jetsons where they talked into a television set, and I realize I'm dating myself by even saying the Jetsons. But our ability to see each other while we're talking, whether it's on Zoom or it's on FaceTime, or whatever, medium we're using, is just incredible.
Yeah, that level of personalization using technology, I agree. It is, it's definitely a game changer for us. So where can we find you? Give us your web information and your contact info.
Very easy, 24-hour phone number, 516-248-6311. And please check out our newly launched website, which is ajslaw.com. On Instagram, if you want to have fun, we're AJS Law and also Defense Attorney Dining. So for the foodies out in the group, you may find some entertaining tidbits there, and we hope you enjoy them.
Thank you so much, Alan. We really appreciate you being with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks again for the privilege and for the honor, Ray.
So my name is Ray Schwetz, along with Denisha Boston Hill, your co-host and producer. This is an NCC Foundation Business Leaders Council production. Visit ncc.edu/WHPC for more information. We're available on Odyssey, iHeartRadio, and as a podcast on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This has been Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.